Hi, and welcome to the Ecom Pitch Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Watson, and along with my co-host, Clint Armstrong, today we're talking to Seb Lyner. And Seb really digs in on how to get more out of your agency in 2025, even if you're thinking about switching agencies. Now, Seb has a ton of experience across the US and UK markets, 20 plus years within the commerce space, including most recently being the Chief Strategy Officer at Implicit here in the US. And we cover quite a few topics with Seb across the commerce marketplace. And I think one of the most important ones that we do hit upon is how to spot when your agency is the problem holding back your growth and when it's something else and how to rectify that. All right, let's get into it. Thanks for listening. So let's get to you. So you've a pretty storied history within the marketing space and commerce, and at the moment you are running your own consultancy. Give us an intro for your services.
Yeah, gosh. So I've been working in e-commerce since it started in the early 2000s. I worked in agencies large and small, including starting and exiting my own. I've worked in all aspects of e-commerce, so website development and management, digital marketing, marketplace management, social commerce, and I've run all kinds of teams within that, including marketplace management, store management, marketing, UX. Strategy, design, development. I've got a depth of knowledge to be able to create strategies and plans covering kind of all aspects of e-commerce. That being said, I do defer to the specialists when it comes to implementing the day-to-day. As I tell clients, look, I could run your campaigns for you, but I'll be selecting the specialist. So it's better to have me provide the plan and pass it to them for implementation. But so, like you said, now I consult on a fractional or a project basis for brands and agencies, helping them to stay ahead in what is the sort of rapidly changing e-commerce landscape. And everybody always likes to write about that. But I was just yesterday, I think e-commerce is in a period of accelerated because now just in a matter of days or hours, even days, you can launch a website from scratch, start on marketplaces, integrate at a click of a button with your back end office systems, create a catalog in minutes using AI, and then you can harness creators to populate your platforms and your socials. So when things are moving that quickly, you really need to move quickly. And I'm all for failing fast, but you need to ensure that failing doesn't get in the way of success. So kind of that's
Yeah,
where
and
I help out.
I think it's failing fast is great if you have a plan on what to do next. If it's just failing fast and panic, then it doesn't help anyone at all.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
move to the next fail.
Next panic. Look, talk to us about so you've got this wide spread of experience and knowledge and contacts within the industry. When you walk into a client situation, what are the problems that you enjoy solving most? Like where are you sort of the most valuable?
I mean, I know it's a cliche, I think there's a new Marvel quote for it, but problems are really just opportunities that haven't been framed correctly. So the sort of problems I solve really fall into two categories: expansion, or I call inertia, right? So expansion could be, and this is obviously the fun part. Inertia is you're coming in to address something a little bit negative, but expansion, I guess, for branders looking to enter new marketplaces, new geographical markets, or even just grow their market share with their existing channels, I ensure that expansion doesn't become a drain on profitability. So too often I see a new marketplace given a free pass while it's draining the budget for expansion elsewhere, right? So, somebody's investing in TikTok Shop and it means that they can't spend any more on DSP on Amazon or something like that. So you've got to be a little bit careful. Other expansion areas might be launching new brands or products. Very important area, because one successful product doesn't mean the next one will be a success. So you need to make sure you leverage success properly. And then, when brands are beginning to leverage new marketing platforms, it's about setting the right goals and KPIs. Not every channel is going to be attributable like the other. And then in terms of inertia problems, that could be sales are consistent, but your competitors are growing, or you've got people entering the market. So the market's growing, but you're not. might be falling sales. Amazon might be becoming unprofitable due to the feeds and competition. Native margins might be eroded. Website margins might be eroded because of CPCs, and especially more recently, falling organic traffic and sales due to the AI search results. Meta is all over the place, constant algorithmic changes, and sometimes feeling their agents not making a difference like they did in that first 3 to 12 months. Reason is to jump ship when rarely that solves anything, because we all know most agencies are pretty much the same. They hate to hear me say that, but we know it.
And it's a great point. And I mean, look, I think changing services can have agencies can have a major disruption in a company, right? In terms of just a dip for months, in terms of their profitability or just pure revenue in general for, during that changeover. So it's a big thing to do. And so it sounds like for you, you like to identify those companies when they're thinking about making that change, and really you come in to help them sort of.
I mean, I can give them an honest view as to how their agency's doing, right? Audit their ads, audit their listings, audit their, Google campaigns, Facebook campaigns, whatever. And I think often agencies are so busy doing the day-to-day that they can't see the bigger picture, or they're a little bit nervous about upselling too much at once, right? Because isn't that, clients get annoyed. The first words out of your mouth are, it's going to cost you some more. So I think, telling a client that, yeah, the agency is right, they need to be doing this. And yes, there will be a cost to that, but, you're going to grow. And then, obviously get a huge kickback from the agency. No.
But it's a good point, because I mean, within commerce, quite often it's such a connected ecosystem, and some of the other parts, I mean, you increase sort of brand awareness over here with some fantastically targeted, emails and some Facebook ads, and suddenly your brand search on Amazon doubles. And that adds directly to your bottom line. It helps everything run. And it can be a hard thing for an owner who doesn't have a background in marketing to actually buy into that. It feels like that's part of the puzzle.
It is horrible to hear that you need to be doing everything, because everything costs something. And yeah, I mean, classic example, I had a client, feminine product client, and they launched on TikTok Shop. We're a bit worried about getting to people to talk about, private things like that. But yeah, influencers were happy doing it. And it was doing okay, just about breaking even. But once you factored in the agency fees, it was running at a bit of a loss. Nobody panicked because they hadn't changed the thing on Amazon. Sales went up 30%. So, if you were holding TikTok Shop to it needs to wash its face on its own, then you would the plug. But looking at your entirety of sales versus what they were before, and your entirety of investment, the ROI was improving. So yeah, and luckily the board had been told in advance they need to look at the overall picture, and the marketing director, she was great and kept telling them Amazon sales are up. I haven't changed anything. We're no new campaigns and no new spend, and things are growing. So yeah, it just that sort of honest and dispassionate, I think, independent voice can kind of help agencies get over that hump with certain clients.
I love that phrase, wash your own face, because I think it captures exactly what's going on within the ecosystem. And I think agencies sometimes are afraid to give clients the bad news up front, like this might not work, because the client might say, let's not do it. Yet, I think that's part of your secret sauce, right? This holistic experience you have, but also the maturity to be able to go, look, this is what it is. We're going in, these are our opportunities, but this might happen. And if so, then we're going to do this. And I think that maturity is something that a lot of agencies struggle to sort of get their hands around.
Yeah. And you mentioned secret sauce, agencies are the same, consultants the same, I guess, maybe. But, I think what I bring there is, many e-commerce directors or CMOs, they're coming from a brand to another brand, and they want to implement what they did at their last brand. But the playbook that worked for one brand may not work for another, because the audience is different, the product's different. Times might have changed. And it's funny, this is what strikes me when you go to conferences and you see somebody talking about how they grew their brand from, selling out of their bedroom to like 8 or 9 figures and, blah, blah, blah. And, it often seems rather unstructured or lucky. And I think that's survivor bias, in that for every 8 or 9 figure brand story, there are thousands of failures, and we ignore those that have failed. But being agency side, I've supported hundreds of brands, many of whom succeeded, many of whom didn't. And I think, that breadth of experience gives me a bit of a unique perspective on not only what works, but what doesn't work, right? I've tried that 8, 10, 15 times. And I guess also being agency side, I'm accustomed to having to move quickly and make an impact quickly, because somewhat unfairly to agencies, you're only as good as your last quarter sometimes. So, and that's unfair to an agency, because they're not in charge of the product, the pricing often. So I guess in short, I provide the what and the how, having been there and done that with teams. So the what, is what do you need to do next to grow your business, plus then how to implement, while keeping your implementation partners honest.
Do you think that you kind of in the situation with the clients you have now, do you think that you're helping out more the agencies that they're working with or those clients themselves? Because it sounds like it's a little bit of both. But if you're smoothing the road for the agency, it may just be an easier kind of drive for them as opposed to trying to make wholesale changes.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. One client's looking to launch new brands, looking to launch onto new marketplaces, grow their native sales, expand their retail partnerships, and they don't know what to do next. And, an agency's probably going to tell them to do the thing that the agency do, right? But, in this situation, actually, the agency, which I happen to know, gave the advice that I gave. Launch your new product first. TikTok Shop's up in the air now with the new M2 coming out. Like, just hold off on a couple of months, and you may get second first mover advantage on the new TikTok, right? Focus on launching your new sort of sub brand, because you can launch that on Amazon, you can leverage the success, etc. And that was what the agency was saying. So reinforcing that. But again, the agency's a little bit too busy to focus on what that new brand should be, that sub brand, and should be positioned, etc. So that's kind of where I was stood.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so you're in a pitch situation, you're getting a feel for this prospective client. Could be a different sort of formats, right, within the pitch world. And for a lot of us within commerce, how do you know when this feels right? Like, is it an expertise sort of fit, cultural, life stage? It's the right sort of category.
Yeah. So running pitches, agency side or advising agencies, or even helping clients pick an agency, there are, a successful pitch is about balancing what the brand wants to see and what the partner, the partner can invest in the sale. And I coined, like, I'm sure this is not unique, but the 5 Ps, right? Everything needs to have start with the same letter. So people, point of view, process, proof, and promptness. So, probably in that kind of order, right? So people by people. And it doesn't make sense to keep the sales process with one individual, especially if they're not involved in day-to-day delivery. We can't possibly be an expert on it. Brands should look to hire companies who are willing to involve the relevant expert, because their expertise is what you're hiring them for after all. And in terms of point of view, the second P, in my experience, brands want to hear what a potential partner thinks about their business, the challenges, the opportunities. A company that explores pain points and makes some suggestions, even on the fly, can demonstrate expertise in a way that the brand can then relate. Of course, without a full discovery process, there's a little risk there that you miss the mark little, but it's the thought process that is important to the client, not the answer. And as long as you're making sure the client understands that put a caveat on it, whatever, that this might not be the answer that we come to once we've done discovery, I think you're fine. One pet peeve I do have is agencies who start, like an Amazon agency or whatever, they start with a massive teardown of the brand's Amazon listing. No idea of the process, the investment, or the testing that's gone into where it is now. So, really what they should be doing is asking questions, asking what they've tried, and then making subsequent suggestions. I think there's too many are willing to just go into full teardown mode. Third P, process workflows can be dull. You don't want to have a one page or 2 pages in a deck maximum. What they do start to do is manage expectations and ensure that everybody understands what happens and when, right? This can reassure the brand on how quickly they're going to get to market. It demonstrates the role of each individual subject matter expert and also supports an agency's pricing. So small thing, but an important one. Proof, right? P. Agencies hate having to put case studies together. It's the bane of their life, but brands really like them. So if you can present brands that had similar challenges or opportunities, even not in the same category, I think that's where to start. You do need to tread a little carefully and ask if category experience is important, because I've had some clients that want you to have had category experience and don't care that you may work with the competition. Others, it's turn off. You just need to be a bit careful. But I mean, in my opinion, unless the same PPC manager is running two competing brands, it's not going to be an issue. Absolutely not. And it's not very difficult to separate, different brands onto different PPC managers. And the last one, prompt right, that starts from answering that first inquiry. Shortlists are compiled before even initial response are received from some agents. And primacy, I always find is important because you can put yourself in the driving seat of what's important in the pitch and what the agendas and parameters are by being the first to respond. And dare I say it, being the first to present. So those are my 5 Ps. And if you're doing those well, typically you get a good feeling. I mean, pitches are all about feelings, both sides. And so that was my shortcut. There's tons and tons of detail behind it and processes and all the rest of it. But if you stick to those, you'll be doing okay.
Your 5 Ps, which I love. You have a good feeling at the end. Like, what's your closing move? Like, how do you close that deal? How do you know you're there and you're like, we've got this, here's the next piece? Like, what is that final move you do?
I'm not a salesperson, but I'm a big proponent of the Sandler sales methodology, and I've been through that process a couple of times actually. It makes you responsive and honest. And the Sandler method does include tactics like questioning strategies, negative reverse selling. But closing is easier if you've done the right thing throughout. So establish pain points and address those. Ask what the selection criteria are and what the brand is looking for from a partner. Establishing what they need versus selling them everything that you do. That can be a turnoff, right? They're suddenly thinking, gosh, this is expensive, and it's expensive because there's all this extraneous stuff, right? And then understanding their budgets without explicitly asking what they're, which is an absolute bugbear of many clients. What's your sales revenue and what's your media spend is the first question out of a qualifying salesperson. But you can get to that answer in different ways. So I think to close, I find stating what they told us that they need, how we can support that, and then defining when we might not. So that's the old sort of negative reverse selling trick. Tends to put the client on your side. And the detailed SOW scope of work, that can come after. You can close a sale, even when the client has just an approximate idea of what you're. There's too many times we see scope of works leaving the building before the clients even say yes. So that's close without a scope is my recommendation.
Love it. So you've won. Congratulations. Like, what is you said you're not a salesperson. Clearly that's a little bit of exaggeration because you've sold us, but like what do you do to help develop that long-term relationship, reduce churn for those new clients? As we know, we've all been through pitches, but the reality of our day is that we want to try and reduce that as much as possible.
I got a training deck for this, and I give it to every team that I work with. The biggest challenge in any new professional relationship is not results, price, speed of delivery, or quality of work. It's managing the transition from sales to delivery. Brands typically are going to display post-purchase rationalization. And that's a cognitive bias where they focus on positives, not negatives. They want this to work out, right? They've gone through a selection process. They want it to work. They want to like you. They want you to do good work. So you should lean into that. And I think that starts with understanding where on the buy-sell hierarchy the agency or the company sits in the eyes of the clients, right? And if they need to be aiming to move up that buy-sell hierarchy. That's the first thing. They're understanding how the brand defines value, as it's not going to be only sales, but also peace of mind and expertise, right? How comfortable do you make that CMO or their product manager over at the client? And how do you demonstrate your expertise? And then the last thing is really understanding and acting upon the drivers of that value. So having a clear value proposition yourself, not the client's product, but the agency or SaaS provider. Communicate frequently. Quantify the value. So you keep telling them, we did this, it had a positive impact. Don't compete on price. Listen, question, continue to identify pain points, the 5 whys, etc. Demonstrate thought leadership. Teach and train the client, right? They want to learn. Make services easy to buy. And I always say, go the extra mile, right? It's not going to break the bank. It's not going to make client unprofitable. So there's a whole training program I have around that. But that's the most critical time. Everybody gets focused on the renewal that's going to happen in a year's time. No. That first couple of months is the most important.
Yeah, I do think that's a really important point, because it's so often like a client will give you a challenge straight away too. And the tendency is to just dive in and start doing the work. But if you don't, you don't have those sort of things answered, and then it just makes your life a lot harder. You're almost like on the back foot straight away, trying to sort of produce miracles without all the context.
All right. So I said earlier, we've all been through pitches. Have you, and obviously you have as well, do you have a funny pitch story where something happened that was completely unexpected or just was out of the blue? We've got several, and every time we think about it, we laugh, but everybody's got that story.
Yeah, I mean, this one's not like funny, but it demonstrates how just asking a few key questions about a client's business. We were pitching a medical device company, and the BD had a quote or SOW drafted for $8K a month to support Amazon. But I said, well, I don't think this is right. So I went back to the client, asked about their business, their funding, etc. And we went back with an $80K a month pitch, and we won the business. Not just for Amazon, actually, to be fair. But they were rejecting agencies who came in under 10K because they were not understanding the scale of the task and the opportunity. And that highlights the importance of asking about a brand's goals and financing, rather than just like, what were your sales last month? What's your media spend? And they're like, well, that doesn't matter, because in 2 months, it's going to be 10 times that. And every client likes to think it's going to be 10 times that. But so, yeah, that's definitely a pain point for brands that are being pitched Amazon services. Pitch theatre is always a good one. It can work really, really well and can not work. I mean, gosh, when I was a account executive in short trousers, I remember an agency in London were pitching Boots for their new loyalty scheme, Boots Advantage Card, when it first came out. And we thought we were a shoe-in because we'd done the strategy leading up to it. And we thought, and they built basically a storefront within the building, within the agency, and just said, well, we know your business. Here it is. Really weird message to give, and we lost the business. But I remember I was pitching. This was in the UK. I was pitching a global cybersecurity firm, and I spoofed. Well, I had my brother helps. He works in telecoms, but he spoofed one of the client's mobile numbers, and which is not that grey areas, and we messaged all the other clients in the pitch about what a great presentation this was. We were all kind of looking at it, looking around and stuff. So explaining this stunt was a bit awkward. And I was like, shit, did we make the wrong decision? But when the penny dropped, they found it hugely funny. And, it demonstrated we understood about security and things like that. So we won. And then one other thing that tickles me, slightly black humor, but at the end of a very positive pitch, and the client was like, yeah, you've got this, no problem at all. And I said to the client, who was the only person with knowledge of their legacy system, don't get hit by a bus, which is a British colloquialism, right? What happened the next day? He was cycling into work and then got hit by a bus and injured. So the kickoff was delayed for a few weeks, and everybody laughed about it afterwards. But yeah, I mean, a few people went, why did you say that? I'm like, it's a British colloquialism. It's just, I wasn't willing you to get hit by a bus. So yeah, it delayed things a few weeks. Although one time we won a farmer pitch, and the kickoff was a year to the day from when they signed the agreement. Bizarre. They rebranded, companies merged, everything happened, but we still ended up doing the business. So yeah, that was a major delay.
Kudos to you guys for like keeping that momentum going, right? During all those changes.
Yeah, half the team had changed by the time we actually started the work.
Right. Wow. That's cool. Look, Seb, they are some pretty good stories there. I really like the hit by the bus thing. It is particularly dark, but I think that's Commonwealth humor for you. So that's good. Look, give us your look. We're sort of at the end of the pod. Really appreciate you coming on. Fantastic guest, and give us your sort of sign off. How can people reach you? We'll make sure your details are within the sort of details description of the podcast. Just give us a sign off.
The company's called Lyner Consulting, Lyner. It's kind of a unique name, so haven't been around that long. It's still right there in Google. And you can reach me on LinkedIn, just Sebastian Lyner. And essentially, what can I do? I leverage my experience on hundreds of brands to provide the what and the how. What's next to grow your business, how to implement, and to keep your implementation partners.
That's fantastic.
Honest. Yeah. That's awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Seb. All right.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Clint. Have a good one. See you guys.